have bags on the beach Sunday. Oh my God, it was so windy. Okay, this goes into a big file somewhere, I guess. Did you put the information on the front? Thank you. Okay. Discuss and take action or pass any of the following. Discuss and take possible action on Trojan Street subdivision CUD applicant 521 Trojan LLC, Richard Schroer, property location 521 Trojan Street. And Kruger asked for this.
So I had a couple calls about the Trojan Street project, neighbors behind there, and I also went and talked to Mr. Shore. And I did get to look at the drainage. And then we had at one time, the city said it was draining to G. And then it went back to draining to Trojan. So I don't know, who's the city engineer for the city? You're here today?
Yes.
Okay. Can
So
you
maybe you can
explain a
talk
little bit
about it.
about what happened? I mean, I have it from when our documents from that first meeting. And in May, it said it couldn't drain to G, and then in June, it said it could drain to G.
So this is the master plan sheet,
Okay,
and it shows, let me find it on here. It shows that area draining in a drainage basin that goes to inlets on Avenue G.
okay,
So this plan does redirect a very small portion of flow over to Trojan Street.
yeah, the front part where the house is in the front goes to Trojan. And y'all didn't change that? I mean, so let me ask you this, was from Trojan Street connecting to the property next door and then draining to G?
This goes to drainage.
The word here, right?
So I think part of it is draining this way here. And then this stuff drains this street this way. There's the site. So it's this way, so.
There's nothing draining that way.
Okay, so where's he?
Is it?
Well,
I think it's all going to Trojan, isn't it?
Okay, so.
No, he said a part is going.
well, I'm
I know,
just,
but I'm looking.
yeah, the plan we have here is, yeah.
No, it may not be the same.
Question.
And then this one comes in here somewhere.
So, but we were told that.
We need to show them all.
Go through this property here, wherever G is, which is.
Can you back up and show them all?
Yeah, can you show everyone?
Can you show everyone? Because
Alex's development.
Okay.
So
You can show everyone.
maybe Mr. Moore can explain it, okay?
Can you show that to everybody or?
Yeah,
I don't
it's
know.
hard to see.
Just kind of like point out where the,
And I can borrow.
I do have a pen. You want pencil instead?
Let me just read what I have.
Oh, I got a highlighter. Okay, swap out. Thanks, sir.
Just approximate here, not gonna be exact.
I'm gonna get up.
Oh, yeah.
Look. So he'll read.
So we don't have any way to show it.
We don't have it on the screen.
No,
or
I
anything.
can't. I can't do it. Google.
You can't do it?
I'm fine,
Not
Nan.
Exactly right.
I'm not a
But
Google Earth
something
expert.
like this.
Correct.
This is a drainage basin boundary for the master plan. And.
Well, let me ask Mr. Shore. Richard, good. So to explain it, the
Okay, so I can't give you dates because my brain doesn't work that way.
Okay.
But somewhere before we went to the city council, I met with Alex Harris and talked to him about taking our stormwater across his property, and we would pay for half the lines going in.
And that would take it over to 11th Street.
Yeah, to G, yeah, 11th,
11th and G, but.
yeah, 11th and G.
G.
That's right. The inlet is on 11th Street, correct. And he was amenable to that, but and of course, he gave me the caveat that he needed to talk to his engineer and see if it was feasible. And so that would have allowed us to keep our elevation down to where it is, basically it's Susan's, right now she's got we're going to put about a 3-foot retaining wall there. And at Alex Harris's, we're probably anywhere from a foot to that 2 or 3 foot along the south border. And of course, where we have the highest point is on Susie Pena's property, where that the bottom of the runoff, and so that's probably going to be as much as 6 feet. And so if we would have eliminated a lot of that height if we were able to put an inlet over by Alex and drain in there. And so for some reason, I wasn't party to the conversations between Alex and Jim, but I got a phone call from the city a few days later and telling me that I needed to drain to Trojan because they were not going to let me go through there.
Huh.
And it was a doable thing, and it would have saved them money because I'd paid for half of it. But they did. Maybe they didn't have capacity to 11. I'm not sure, but we'll let
Okay,
Stephen talk about that. So
okay.
that's the conversation I had. And so,
Yeah. Thank you.
All right.
And part of the significant part here is that with this, the intake structure that they put essentially to Susan's property, it's almost a 2.5 foot drop, capturing almost 2.5 foot of water that wasn't able to be caught and relieved in the past. And that's the storm intake structure you see right here. So that's a significant amount of water that will be removed from that property that wouldn't have been removed otherwise. It's part of this. And then outflows onto Trojan, like you said, in this detention pond area. That's the strategy about right here, correct? This is to me probably the most significant part of this whole thing. Is this being at that flow line. Because otherwise that's about a 10 foot. Look at the contour there, it's about a 10 foot. Yes, so the contour.
Joel, and what
contour there's about
is
10
the,
foot.
I'm sorry.
So what here,
What's the overall biggest concern?
Well, I guess the first thing was, like he said, he was flowing to G Street, trying to drain to G Street, but now y'all have him draining all to Trojan. And so he had to bring all the fill in, and now he's got a much higher level than it would have been before. We're just trying to protect some of the people behind there too, make everybody happy in one setting,
Okay,
if it,
so
because on one of the preliminary plats, it says that he could drain to G, and then y'all changed it to draining all to Trojan. So I
And
guess,
maybe Alex wouldn't let him, and why wouldn't?
I don't
you
know. So that's the question. What happened, or why does it change?
I don't know the reason for the change, but the applicant's engineer is here and he can answer that.
Okay. Just trying to get an answer. So,
My position in this is just to review the plan and make sure that it meets the city's storm drainage design manual
Mhm.
and the intention of the master plan.
okay. So you're being the city engineer for Mr. Shore.
No, for
I'm the
us.
city engineer for y'all.
He's
Right,
he's a
right.
review
I'm-
engineer.
I mean, that's who's telling him certain where it's
No,
got to
he looks
drain
up-
to.
He looks at
They
the plan
submit a
and says
plan.
yes or no.
Right,
And
right.
I comment
But
on
it
and-
changed. So why did it change?
So here's his engineer is going to talk
So-
to us about it.
Good evening.
Hi.
Michael York Engineering. Technically, I guess you could say the plan changed. As far as being designed, it never really changed. Our original intent was to follow the master plan
Right.
when we got to the preliminary plat stage. And as Richard said, we got with Alex Harris's engineer and went through that. And we were told there wasn't capacity to go to that system for Richard's piece of property. So that wasn't a possibility. We did show that on, I guess, one of the preliminary plats because that's, what
I
we,
have two different.
Who told you that?
the design engineer at Urban, Stephen Grinwall, was the engineer on that project. And for whatever reason, there was no capacity to go there. They had to do some improvements and I guess couldn't make any bigger. There wasn't capacity. And so our only option was to drain to Trojan. And one thing I think is,
So there's sufficient capacity on Trojan?
well, that's why we have detention pond regardless. So we're mitigating the increase in runoff. But one thing I do want to clear up, so you're looking at the master plan and it's lines drawn on paper. The overall intent, is to figure, delineate the drainage basins as best you can. But it shows that area was intended to drain to Avenue G. Physical reality is it never drained to Avenue G. It's way lower than Avenue G. It drained to 12th Street. I mean, it ponds because it's lower than everything, and then it spills over into 12th Street. The master plan showed it draining to G's, which is why we wanted to design that way. But when we were told that's not a possibility, so we've now drained over to Trojan. Had to do a lot of research, figure out where we can go. There is a storm system on, I think that's Avenue E.
Yeah.
And so we put in a long linear, basically a ditch that's got a little small straw at the end of it. So the water from the proposed development will fill up in the ditch and that'll act as a detention pond and then it'll trickle out slowly, metered into the Trojan Street right of way. And then you may have seen in the notes, part of the discussion at the preliminary plat stage or maybe final, I don't recall, when that church school went in several years ago or whenever it was, they put a driveway in on Trojan, but somehow had never put a culvert in. And so part of this project, they're going to go ahead and put a culvert in for them and then do a little bit of regrading. And at some point, I don't know, we were told maybe the city was going to do some regrading on Trojan.
We were gonna maintain as we should, the
Yeah.
drainage ditches,
Um,
part of this, so that when you came in with this existing detention pond area, that our ditches would be,
right.
and it's just an ongoing maintenance for us, but we're always kind of reactive, catching up. So we hit the areas that are in most need of maintenance when the time comes. And so like I said,
Understood.
we thought that was the very least we should do is go maintain these ditches, which just haven't risen to the normal maintenance cycle yet.
Okay. And regardless, even if the city didn't get to it, when they get to that part and they put that culvert in, if the city hasn't cleaned out or, fixed that ditch there, they'll do it. But the drainage, so it'll come from the development, goes to Trojan Street. Under that culvert, they're going to put in at the church's driveway. And then there's an existing culvert that actually goes underneath Trojan Street. So that's where that ditch needs to be cleaned up a little bit so the water can actually get there. And then that goes to an inlet into Avenue E. And then for the low-lying area, we put in basically a culvert, but we put in an outlet for flooding relief, which is the same thing when Alex Harris's development went in. The city engineer, I guess, because that was urban design, so you guys used your alternate city engineer, which is Hanson. They approved a design where they had an outlet, so when that low-lying area fills up, it'll eventually spill out into their storm system. So we did the same thing.
Yeah, I was just a little confused because in May, I guess this is your preliminary plat. It said that you couldn't drain through Mr. Harris's property. And then on this one in June, it said that the Trojan end was going to drain to Trojan and then the east side of the property was going to drain to G. So I was a little confused. I didn't know which one was
Yeah,
which. And then
we created several options and we were kind of working with their engineer to figure out if that was going to be feasible or not. And so we went ahead and kind of designed it different ways. And then, in the end, we were told no capacity to go to G. So we went with the option that goes to Trojan.
Yeah.
And at the council meeting, when this was brought up, I do remember that we did talk about both of those as being options that would be
Right.
available, options, either G or Trojan.
Right, I remember that, and then in the retaining wall. But, but then some of the owners behind me had a lot of questions and
And the film has been brought in, and I know that caused a lot of alarm, but you gotta understand, they were at the very initial stages, civil construction. Of course, there's retaining walls that are part of this whole feature, and that fill will look entirely different once it's actually part of what they've given us plans for.
Right, yeah, so they really just been bringing in sand to get it there, and then they'll start rough grading. It's like they've started spreading it around a little bit. I did get with the contractor just to let him know before they get really any further, they need to make sure and establish just like that overflow route. So if we do get a big rain,
Yeah.
it'll be able to get out to Trojan.
I know
And they
that-
did do that today, by the way.
I know that Mr. Shore had sent the people the copy of the drainage plans, and they seemed to be okay with it. I think the only question they had was, she said, in my opinion, the retaining wall, culvert, storm intakes, et cetera, on the York engineering plan all work like they're supposed to, then my property should be okay. But I would hope there would be an accountability if it does not plan out to the according to the plan. Because some things were built next door to them that didn't pan out, so they just want to make sure that if these plans, like they have seen, are going to be correct, that they are good with it, as long as it all works.
I also hope that it works as designed.
In fact, I've talked to Mr. Shore, and I don't, Michael and I may have talked about it, but I know I've talked to our city engineers, and we are gonna monitor this and actually have review step in between.
Yeah.
So that we're not gonna wait till the end and keep our fingers
Yeah,
crossed
yeah.
it's all done right. So during construction, we also plan on having our reviewing engineers for the citywide and make sure that everything's moving along, again, according to the plan, so that we don't wait till the very end to find out.
Yeah, because that's a really weird area, and there's not a lot
There
of
is.
drainage on 12th or anything else.
Right, and that was part of our, we were told 12th is basically it's a lake. Make sure you get water away from there because before the development, that area would fill up and then just spill over to 12th.
Yeah,
So-
especially all that 42 inches of rain we had last year, so
Right.
we saw what it could do.
And we started right after that, so we were able to see some of the impact of what that did.
Yeah.
And one other thing I think worth mentioning, if and when that low-lying area ever does develop, it's gonna have to be raised as well. So right now, it's kind of a lake because it's so low, but if they build a habitable structure there, they'll have to be up, above the base
Yeah.
flood elevation like everybody else. So they'll eventually have to pick up, and then they may drain to Trojan as well.
And how high is the retaining wall? Is it different heights at different areas?
Correct.
Okay,
So the highest point is along I guess that's the Pena tract, which is in their lowest area, it's right about 6 foot. And then it quickly gets down between 4 and 5 feet.
Yeah.
And when you get on the Alex Harris side, because they're raising their property, I think it's 1 to 2 feet, maybe 3 feet at the most on that side.
yeah. Well, appreciate everything. I know it's been a lot of work for you.
We're getting there though.
Well, just concerned about everybody, so,
Understood.
Anybody have any questions? Joan, anybody?
No, I don't think so. You think that it's good?
I think so.
You're our
So
engineer.
that's why we have an applicant's engineer and a reviewing engineers to verify that everything's gonna work and follow the intention of the master plan. And
If we just get the drainage cleaned out, I
Yeah,
mean, that's the problem, right?
it's,
Back
Not
up.
bad, it's just for everything to work to an optimum efficiency, we should do our part and keep our drainage system, which in this case is a lot of open air ditches,
yeah,
viable and clean. You notice around town that we have a maintenance plan, it's just,
Well, can we
there's always more ditches than there is manpower and time.
Right, we just don't
recommend-
want to increase flooding though.
can we recommend that, that the applicant goes and prioritizes the culvert for the Trinity to increase the flow? So if there is a great rain, it'll lessen the flooding? Like asking that, make that a priority?
Well, yes, but the problem is the culvert's just a component to everything else.
Correct, but if that's the dam that's causing everything else to back up and flood, then
We'll
maybe,
work to make sure that's not the weak link, that if everything else is moving along, that culvert doesn't hold us up. And they've already.
they said they would do it. I'm saying maybe if we just kind of,
They're working on it today, so.
okay.
yeah.
It seems like they used to have a lot of flooding on the other end of Trojan at Avenue C. Is that all fixed up?
We'll have to wait and see when it rains.
Right,
When it
right.
rains.
Okay,
Because
thank
there's no
you.
storm drains on 12th, right?
Mhm.
Think so.
No, we've got storm
On
drains.
12th Street?
We've got several inlets on the west side, and part of the funded drainage bond that we have now will incorporate another one a little further down north. It will carry across, it'll pick up another one down a little bit in the design stage already.
Okay.
We've got 3 or 4 great, pretty big.
But it's been in the design stage for a long time. When are they gonna do it?
All it takes is money, man.
Huh?
All it takes is money,
Just money?
just money.
Okay, are we through with that one? Any other comments? Okay.
Yeah.
Update and general discussion on Old Town Preservation Advisory Board to include board meeting, staff contact, and any other items city council wishes the Old Town Preservation Advisory Board to address. Kruger, again.
Oh, is Francesca here? Yeah, where is she?
So at the last city council meeting, the city council approved members to the Old Town Preservation Board. We sent out an email to kind of poll our members to see when they're going to be available to come in for a meeting. We got one response, and I know we have 2 members here, so hopefully we'll get some more responses so we can maybe have that meeting next week. As far as staff contact is concerned, it's going to be the building department, so it'll be Rick Adams and Nicole Boyer for the staff contact for that. Do y'all have any questions? I know some of the board members are here. Do you have any questions or you want to address?
Kathy's
anything
here.
with the board members or?
So
anything
you're
you
gonna
would like to
contact them
add?
and you're setting up a meeting for when?
Hopefully next week. We told them to give us the dates that they're available, but if, they can't meet next week, then it'll be sometime this month.
Okay,
All right.
thank
Any
you.
questions?
No.
Yes.
Under the impression or something about we were under council and not gonna be, not necessarily in the building department. Did I misunderstand that?
You were a subsection of the planning and zoning.
Okay.
I didn't think it was, but
It's,
I want to go back and look.
it is a subsection of the planning and zoning, which is weird why y'all appointed a member of the P and Z to the thing, but that was fine. But yes, it is a subsection of P and Z.
And you always have a staff contact at your meetings to help you with the current ordinances and
We'll gladly defer to
everything
council.
else.
Yeah, get it off your
But
plate.
then if you're going to do that, you two have to post joint meetings, right?
Yes.
Because they would have
I
to,
don't know. Let me go
if the
back and look
council
at it.
directs and you got to have 3 of them, then you have to have a quorum and you have to have joint meetings.
Okay.
Anything else?
No. Uh-uh.
Okay. That's it. Joe Ellen?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
We're just trying to make sure that everybody was contacted and when they were thinking about having a meeting and getting everybody lined up.
Okay. C, discuss and take possible action on using city hotel occupancy tax, HOT, funding for the development of a ferry fast pass program to address affordable housing issues. Councilmember Seeloff.
Yeah, so this idea was brought up and I said I'd discuss it and I just wanted to get a feel for the rest of the council members. I know that the use of a fast pass ferry lane has come up several times in the past. And it was frequently an issue simply because the cost was so high. It would become a rich person's lane, right? But since we have Darla here and, any other members of the council, the intent of this was, would it be possible to reimburse workers in Port Aransas using HOT funds to pay for for that pass fee?
No, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
A brief background, and then Darla talked about hot tax. Let me kind of tell you where we were, because this has come up twice before.
Oh, yeah, that's, I understand.
And so the good news, because Darla will have the bad news, I'm afraid. The good news is in 06, they passed legislation that created a mechanism for both Bolivar Ferry, Galveston Bolivar, and Port Aransas for a fast pass system. The only catch, and it's what's bit us in the behind twice before, is that TxDOT required 500 people sign on the dotted line for that $250 for double axle, for a vehicle, for that pass. Before they would even start looking at the design of the priority lanes and how it would actually work. We never even came close in either instance to that.
Okay.
The problem that we ran into that TxDOT also made us very aware of, and that they were not at the time, like I said, this is 06 legislation it was not even negotiable, was the fact that if one of our business owners wanted to get that pass, even if there was a funding mechanism to buy it,
Mhm.
TxDOT insisted that that go on a vehicle and it was non-transferable. And the problems for our employers was that if Mr. Clark were to buy one for a couple of his salespeople or managers or whomever, and they left 2 weeks later, that $250 pass went with them. And that was a big stumbling block for the business owners in
The
kind of with
thought
the
here
other
would be a
part.
reimbursement after working for a certain number of months.
That of course would have been between the business owner, but the fact is that when it was determined that it couldn't be transferred, that the Clarks couldn't buy 5 for their workers, and those that they had to be for 5 individuals and they were non-transferable. But that became the other problem with the business community. So like I said, there's a mechanism in place, and it's been tried twice before. We just haven't reached that threshold where TxDOT will even look at the priority component. Now, the funding, Darla can talk about.
Quick question for you, Rick. You know, in the past, how many people signed up? Do we get? I mean,
I think the last
200?
time it was
I don't
100.
think we hit 200.
Yeah, I think it was 140,
And it was-
but I'm going off memory.
It was probably only about 4 years ago.
Okay. I mean, I just.
I'm remembering right. I know you were both on council.
Yeah, and then the other question, I mean, and TxDOT was very evasive when it came to how would it work, because they didn't want to even get into that until we had 500 names. But the idea is that there wouldn't be a ferry devoted to that pass. They'd load so many and then they'd keep filling in. So there's, like I said, even though there's a mechanism in place, Port Aransas is named as one of those ones that can do it. Like I said, a lot of questions as to the viability.
It was Galveston or?
Bolivar,
Bolivar,
Galveston, and
Galveston.
Port Aransas were both written into the legislation.
Do you know if they have,
They do.
they do it up?
I
there?
think they do have a fast pass at Bolivar because I know someone who I believe uses it. Their ferry is a lot different than ours, though.
Right, yeah.
It's a long ride.
Yeah.
So anyway,
Eastern
that's,
property.
so that part
All right.
is in
Appreciate
place.
the info.
Yeah, yeah.
And you don't feel then from.
It's not legal.
From your body language. that
It
this
is
would
not
be
legal.
Identifiable.
It would
as
have to be
heads and
changed in the
beds.
state legislature. You can't take tax money and subsidize an individual, number one. And number two, it's just not a qualifying,
It's not a tourist. You'd have to
it's
give
not
it
a
to
qualifying
tourists.
expenditure.
Okay, I'll try. I'll keep trying.
Yeah, keep trying because
Attempt number 4.
it's something that definitely needs to be.
I mean, it would help. I mean, one of the big things that you hear is folks can't rely on the ferry boat because of the inconsistency in the.
Well, they don't, but there is a boat, a truck,
Our
a bus
RT
that comes over,
Yes,
right?
Right,
Yeah.
it's starting, it's starting this month.
And so they get fast tracked onto
Yeah,
the.
they get
Yes,
loaded.
they
Ferry.
do get fast
Loaded
tracked
priority.
and they will pick them up at HEB and Aransas Pass is one of the stops. And so people park there and. they
And then their
ride
employers
over.
have to pick them up at the,
Yes,
Yeah.
ma'am.
yeah.
And there's ways to catch the bus too. On this side for RTA, they can
Yes.
catch the shuttle and ride it around its route, or they can get picked up and we get a
Would
lot
you
of
pick
usage
up?
on that, a whole lot of usage.
I have actually bought my employees bicycles.
Where they pick them up, Aransas?
So they just.
HEB is one of the stops. There's a stop in Ingleside too.
Crossing the bicycle.
Oh, really?
Can they
Mhm.
take their bicycle over?
And the RTA guy actually
Absolutely.
came over last week and we were discussing, he said he felt like it was tourists that were just parking in HEB and coming over. And I went, no. He thought that the tourists were riding over to HEB in Aransas Pass to do their shopping versus IGA. And I went, no, they're not. gonna do that. It's workers. I promise it's workers. They're
funny.
parking in HEB and riding over.
But
He
actually,
just thought it was strange. There was somebody getting on at HEB. He thought they were shopping there. No.
Okay.
So they'll do that before they get here. That's what their intent is.
D, update and general discussion on the city comprehensive plan. Who is going to do that?
That's you. We'll deal with it, not them. I don't know
Rick,
who
you got
asked.
to do this, didn't you?
You asked for that update.
Not
It
much,
doesn't say.
yeah, not much of a, not, really not much of an update at this point. So the next advisory committee meeting is the 17th, May 7th, 18th. There's a, we've got a 17th and an 18th. The impact fee study. So
So
that'd
what
be
did
the
she
next-
say?
So the 17th is the Capital Improvement Advisory Committee. So that's the one that will look at the impact fees, and that'll be a kind of an overview for planning and zoning. Anybody else that would attend. The 18th then is the next Comprehensive Plan Advisory Committee meeting, and then I believe that they'll schedule a public meeting
Afterwards.
that same week.
Yeah.
And it'll be much like the same agenda as before. They'll have that. It'll be virtual, so anybody that couldn't physically attend will be able to do almost the exact same things: input, offer comments, and the portal's still active. Somebody had made a comment that it wasn't intuitive. I can't find what they were what the problem was, because it's still all the inputs up there. Now they cut off
Comments.
additional input at some point so they can reconcile everything and project the transmittal of what's already been done, but that's still up there. What you guys have attended in the past, and all the inputs are there. They will flesh out what they perceive based on that input, the public and community input, the priorities, and that'll be presented at the advisory committee meeting that some of you guys participate in. So
Can we have any more input on, at that point, to make sure that they're
it'll be
looking
ongoing. I mean, this will
at
be a
flooding
input,
and they're
input,
looking
input,
at
input.
drainage and all that kind of stuff?
Mhm. All of it. And I think that the planning and zoning, one of the issues that the council had talked about, the setback issues, that was P&Z had thrown that back to comp plan. So all that'll be discussed at the right time.
Were you here in 2009 when they threw the last one in the trash? I mean, what was the reason for that? I mean, I read some of it, what it was, but what do you think it was?
I think it was just heavily weighted on I don't think they felt there was a balance there, that council that was seated at the time felt that it was balanced, that it met everybody's, based on the input that they had gotten and seen. They didn't feel that it was representative and tossed it.
The comprehensive plan is supposed to be the basis for what? For
The
changing?
vision, I mean, what the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years should be for Port Aransas, and what that looks like as far as density and aesthetics to the degree we can monitor. I mean, we can determine
I
architectural
thought some of it
controls
was
and-
work done. I don't know if it was thrown in the
On the last one?
trash.
All the-
Yeah.
all the
'Cause Port
zoning, the
master
CZ1,
plan came on it,
CZ2.
the zoning. There was a lot that came on that comprehensive plan.
The
that
one
wasn't
prior
active
to
from my
that, Darla, I
understanding.
think is what she's
Yeah,
talking about.
Dave
The one
said
prior
it
to that,
was
Okay, maybe prior
it was
to
prior to
that.
that.
Well, it
yeah,
was
so the-
2009. And then 2000, then the council and P&Z took it over, and then they passed it in 2010.
Correct, and it was a
Which was all
revised.
the
it was a
density
different-
laws were changed. So,
There
And
was also a lot of additions too, because I know
yeah, the
that
bike and mobility plan, which was never fully implemented, but parts of that were done, the thoroughfare plan.
There were parts of it.
Some of the roads and street improvement plan, was done. But it's
Yeah.
been a while. The one
Well-
prior to that is the one that I think they felt wasn't very
was
balanced.
that the Vision 2000 or something?
That's the one that we're in now.
Okay.
I mean, that's the one that we actually
And
implemented.
so it
Parts
could be
of
the basis for changing ordinances and
oh, yeah.
It becomes your guide. I mean, it becomes the guiding principles as to,
it doesn't say you
Oh.
have to do it. It says, here's what you could do.
Yes.
well, if you don't follow that, then it becomes, and our city attorney can probably speak to that, but it becomes there's a lot more potential litigation that comes in place when you start denying or approving things if it's not consistent with what your comprehensive plan has said.
Okay.
So it's kind of the guiding
Okay.
principles. Is that
Okay.
kind of a fair?
That's fair, but the comprehensive plan should be a fluid document that is constantly looked at and updated and renovated. It's not a document that you close and put away.
Right, but who updates it?
Well, we're supposed to. But I think when the problem is, like, when people
P&Z.
look at it is, there's a
Right.
comprehensive plan that says,
P&Z.
know this, and then when somebody does something to, like I said, being fluid, they're like, well, no, the comprehensive plan 10 years ago said you can't do this.
Well,
And-
that's
and-
why in a perfect world without hurricanes in the mix, the
Yeah.
comprehensive plan is addressed every 5 years.
Right.
So that it
It's
that
updates.
that fluidity is kind of, done in those kind of blocks.
But I don't think that it's the US Constitution, right?
Right. No, I agree.
Right.
Right? So to the extent that during that 5-year period, there are differences that impact the community, and it doesn't completely follow what the plan says, then you just update the plan to meet the new needs.
Right.
Visions change.
Right. I think some people think it's a stick and not like the roadmap, but so anyway, that's.
So, and then just my final note on the comp plan. So what'll happen is I think you'll start to see things accelerate as this input starts to generate priorities, and those priorities start to be then fleshed out in greater detail. So like I said, I think you'll see the input in things go from, a high level view, it'll start to focus down and narrow.
And get, very specific.
Okay, thank you. City council comments and items for future consideration. Does anyone have any?
Never mind.
Okay, the meeting then is adjourned. Thank you all.
Keep after it because
I think it's a good.